Many experienced growers will advise that those new to growing invest in perennials and shrubs right at the beginning in their first season. And looking back, this is really very sound advice that I wish I had have taken more seriously. When you start growing and selling cut flowers, generally you will have time on your side. You're yet to establish a client base, and quite often you may have flowers going spare that you've been unable to sell. This, of course, is the perfect time to have small perennials growing on in your bed, getting themselves established so that when your business is ready for them, they're ready at the same time. I have found my existing perennials extremely useful as cut flowers, and as I am growing and selling the flowers as a side hustle, it's obviously a real benefit to me that I do not need to restart every single perennial from seed every single year. Now, of course, perennials do still require some care. It's not just a case of planting them and forgetting about them forevermore. Particularly perennials that I suppose some people would class somewhat as a weed, that grow loads of new growth every season. They will need to be divided to be given a little bit more space at regular intervals. And of course, some plants are not perennials. They can be short-lived perennials. So they're perennials, but for 2, maybe 3 years. And then you need to think about propagating them either from cuttings or, of course, restarting them from seed. So by increasing my dependence on perennials, I'm not completely reducing my workload entirely, but I will be hopefully making things a lot easier on myself. Many of the new perennials that I am growing are only going to produce me a very limited number of flower stems in their first year, and in some cases some of them may not produce me any flowers initially at all. Not only that, in some cases I only have limited numbers of some of the new varieties that I have, and I've actually left intentional spaces so that at some point during the future I can propagate the new perennials that I have to eventually go ahead and fill in those gaps. And you see these upside down pots signify gaps that I've left to be able to add more of particular plants. And in this case, I'm looking to have more of both the echinops here and my sea holly. And with that combination of both very young perennial plants and not having quite enough of them to fill entire blocks in my beds, it does pose somewhat of a dilemma. Am I actually going to be able to grow enough cut flowers this season to fulfill my orders? So those of you that follow my channel will know that I do have a planting plan, and owing to the fact that I'm growing all of these extra perennials, it did mean that I had to whittle down the number of annuals that I grow quite drastically for me, because I probably grew too many varieties, although you'll never get me to see it like that. I just love them all. But I did whittle it down. I whittled it down to, I think it's 12 varieties. I may be wrong there, but what I'll do is I'll link in the corner that video, so if you are interested you can see which of those annuals which I've decided to give pride of place and to concentrate my efforts on growing this season. And basically that's in one corner of the garden here, which is 4 beds, and also in the polytunnel, as well as 2 digger track beds which I have next to the house. And the more time I've spent in the garden here, particularly in planting my new very small perennials and really dawning on me just how small some of these plants are, I started to wonder if the selection of annuals I was growing, and more to the point the amount of them that I was growing, was actually going to be enough to pop into my bouquets this season. So I've had to come up with almost, it's not a different plan because the plan will still be as plan 1, but I've added a part B onto the plan, if you like, and I thought it would be a great idea for me to just partly go through plan B with you here today, although I must say it's not completely finalised yet. for one, I haven't written it down on paper, and for me, unless something goes down on paper, it's not final. But I've basically thought of 2 ideas which may allow me to grow some more annuals out here in the cut flower patch this season, just to tide me over until those perennials really get going. One of the ideas that I think could potentially work is that I have a 10-metre bed here that follows the external fence of the cut flower patch. South is that way, and north is behind it here. And I've gone ahead and I've planted, I haven't planted them all yet, this is work in progress, but I started planting my pittosporum shrubs, which I'm going to be growing for foliage in my bouquets. And obviously at the moment these shrubs are tiny and they do not need all of this space. They will eventually, and I'll pop in some pictures of some of my more mature pittosporum that I have elsewhere. But I did think that this season I may well be able to put a row of extra annuals in between each of my pittosporums. Now it's a 10-metre bed. And I can't remember if I'm going to put in 8 pittosporums or 10, but anyway, it will at least give me a little more space to add a few more annuals. Now, I may well have found some more space to grow some more annuals, but I promise you, I'm not planning on buying any more seed. I'm planning on just using up seed that I've got left over from last season, and some of the things I grew last season that are not on my list of annuals, and I was thinking perhaps I would just grow them nearer the house. I may now be able to fit down here, and they were things like cosmos and amimagus, a few things like that. So now hopefully I'll be able to plant those just down here, and for one season I don't think they'll affect the shrubs. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to really crowd these shrubs, so I'm not planning on growing all the way around them, just, you know, one row either side so that some air ventilation can still come in. And in case any of you are wondering what's with all the hay, it's actually as a defence against my new temporary residence. It seems my chickens, you know, while they're looking for all the little bugs and worms and things they want to eat, have taken to scratching around some of my quite small perennials to the point where they've actually been damaging them and digging them up. So by using hay as a mulch instead of my all-time favourite miscanthus, it's actually made it far too difficult for the chickens to do that now, because the hay sort of gets all caught up around their feet. Not wanting to spoil their fun, they're still welcome to any slugs that they can find, but this is just a means of protecting those plants until they get more established. Rather annoyingly, something's been chewing my anemones, and they're not actually even eating it, they're just sort of chewing them. And the reason we've come in here with the crates of anemones and ranunculus, I've also got some dianthus and some ixia here, is to talk about the possibility of me actually growing in some more crates. And I think I've decided that although, again, stock are not on my list of flowers to grow, I have seed left over from last season. And because stock are one and done, unless of course you buy some of the branching varieties, but the flowers I'm particularly talking about are one and done, then growing them in a crate is a good option. And you can also plant them quite closely together. So again, although a crate's not a vast amount of space, I should still be able to fit a good number of stock plants into these crates. And because stock really prefer to grow on in colder weather, I have actually gone ahead with that plan, and I've sown some stock, and my intention is to go ahead and plant them, not in these crates because they'll need planting out before these anemones and ranunculus are finished, but I did go ahead and get myself a delivery of some more. And there are various other things you can grow in crates. I know lots of people have grown dahlias in crates. I think they put 2 tubers in each crate. I'm not sure that's something I will do, but you never know. I am also very tempted to grow some sunflowers in some crates. Now that is on my grow list, and I grow the sunflower Premier Orange up. And initially on my plan, I had planned to put that into my planting beds. But because I do like to succession sow my sunflowers every 2 weeks, I know a lot of people do them every week. And maybe if I use crates, I may be able to do that. But for me, growing in a bed, I never had enough space to succession sow quite so frequently. So sunflowers are definitely another good option for the crates, and then of course that will free me up the space in the bed that I had allocated for those. Now crates are fantastic, but obviously there are some disadvantages, with one of the main ones being that they're something that I'm going to need to water, and some of the crates are a lot shallower than others, and of course the shallower they are, the less space there is for the roots, and more likely the more frequently they will need to be watered. But this isn't something I necessarily see myself doing for many years to come, unless of course it is a huge success. This is just me trying to cram more flowers into my cut flower garden this season, just to give those perennial plants a chance to establish. But moving forward, I do think I will be using the crates again, but next season I intend to use them for bulbs. I've had terrible problems this season with all of my spring bulbs. I don't know if you remember, something had been digging underneath them, and something's actually now been pulling the bulbs out, biting the roots off of the bulbs, and just generally causing quite a lot of unwanted destruction. So my plan will definitely be next season to put things like my drumstick alliums, my gladioli and my irises into these crates instead. Do let me know in the comments if you have any advice for me with regards to growing in crates, because although I've grown ranunculus in them a few years ago and a few other things like mainly bulbs, I haven't actually grown stock or sunflowers in them again. If you have, please let me know how you got on, or likewise if you grew anything else in pots or containers that you think either did particularly well or that you'd advise I really didn't try. As always, if you did like the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to follow my ongoing gardening and cut flower journey, don't forget you can subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time. And owing to the fact that I'm growing and selling cut flowers as a side hustle,